Getting stuck trying to figure out what to eat for dinner is always frustrating, especially if you find yourself creating the same things on a repetitive cycle. One night you may find yourself craving Mexican cuisine, but have grown uninspired when it comes to crafting another burrito or another taco. Empanadas, a traditional dish originating in Latin America, can help re-inspire your cooking skills as well as provide a simple and tasty dinner for you and your family. My grandma from Puerto Rico, or whenever she came to Nebraska, would always make these delicious treats. However, the most recent time she was here, so this summer, I sat down with her and helped her construct and fry this delicious food. In this speech, I will give a brief history of empanadas, how to prepare the ingredients for the empanadas, how to cook them, and finally, how to serve them. Before delving into the delicious ingredients and full recipe, I think it's incredibly important to take a deeper look into empanadas and the incredibly interesting history behind their creation and development over time. One thing that many people are unsure about is the specific location in which empanadas originated from. While some believe that empanadas have always been a Latin American tradition, including myself, plenty of evidence actually suggests that empanadas originated in the countries of Portugal, as well as Galicia, Spain. Elsewhere, an accredited food history website that delves into Latin food history, stated on September 28, 2021, that the earliest mention of empanadas by name is in a 1520s cookbook in Catalan. The original empanadas resembled a pie that were sliced into single pieces, but the basic concept has remained the same ever since. The word for empanadas originates from the Spanish word empanar, which means to wrap or to coat in bread. Elsewhere once again stated on September 28, 2021, that as history progressed, Spanish colonists brought the dish with them to Latin America and the Philippines. From this point, the traditional dish of empanadas spread across the countries of Latin America as well as in the Philippines. As the spreading of empanadas began to spread throughout Latin America, differences to the standard meat-driven empanadas began to pop up. Empanadas began to diversify in flavor. Instead of normal beef or chicken empanadas, sweet empanadas and empanadas filled with vegetables began to become more mainstream within Latin America. The change from pie-type empanadas to singular empanadas is still unclear. In my opinion, I believe that this change sprouts from wanting to be able to bring them with you anywhere you'd want to go. Back when I was on vacation on Puerto Rico with my family, one thing I noticed was the overwhelming amount of people who brought them with them for work at lunch. It was almost as common as seeing someone eating a sandwich here in the United States. Despite the many changes the empanadas have undergone, the initial ingredients and recipes have remained relatively similar, and not too changed when compared to the original recipes hundreds of years ago. First and foremost, we need to prepare the ingredients that will go inside and outside of our empanadas. The very first step in the preparation of empanadas is the creation of the green cube. Here's one right here after we let it thaw out. Green cubes can be made at the time of making or can be made prior to the cooking of the empanadas. And preferably you should make these on a day prior to cooking, so it's just one less step in the process. So the green cubes ingredients are made of sliced onion, green pepper, a little bit of garlic, and cilantro. So you're gonna place equal amounts of these in a dicer and you're gonna dice them up so they're thinly diced, so it should look something like this. And this is also known as rasau in Latin America, and this is the sauce that we will be using for the empanadas. So the next part of the ingredients is the dough. For the empanadas, one way to make the dough is from scratch. As stated by David Tanis of New York Times on July 3rd, 2013, you're gonna put 2 cups of boiling water, 4 ounces of lard, 1.5 teaspoons of salt in a large mixing bowl. Stir to melt lard and dissolve salt. So you're gonna then cool it to a room temperature, gradually stir in flour with a wooden spoon until dough comes together. You're gonna knead for a minute or 2 on a floured board until firm and smooth. And you'll add more flour if it's sticky, and you're gonna wrap and refrigerate it for 1 hour. However, for today, and for a much easier approach, we are just going to have the shells pre-purchased for us, and you can find these at any local grocery store. And they usually come in packs of 10. So depending on what you're feeling would be best for dinner and for the filling inside the empanada, you can really change it up with many different ingredients. Leila Pujol, an Ecuadorian food blogger, stated on March 14th, 2022, that these delicious bundles can be prepared with so many different types of filling, from traditional savory fillings to mouth-watering sweet fillings. For today's example, we will be doing a standard beef empanada. In order to make this filling, we will need a pound of hamburger, and for this, we are just gonna be using the amount of hamburger that you would use in one empanada, and also a little bit of cheese that would go in the empanada as well. So what we're gonna start doing is taking all of this and we're going to fry this up in a pan we have here. So we're gonna fry up the meat as well as a little cheese. And then we are also going to be taking the green sauce and mixing that also within the meat. Depending on how many pounds of beef you're using, you might need to use 1 or 2 green cubes, just depending on the size of people you have that are going to be eating. So after the green cubes have been added in, you're gonna add in the rest of your favorite ingredients and season it the way that you like. Once again, this just demonstrates how empanadas are incredibly changeable and can be used in many different situations and circumstances. So now that our ingredients are prepared and all sat out, we are ready to finally cook the empanadas. So the first step we have in this is putting the meat into the dough. So right here we have the shell once again. You're going to take the shell kind of like this, and you're going to place the meat in. And then you're also going to be placing the cheese within the empanada. So it will look something kind of like that, minus the bags. And then once you're done with that, you're going to close off the empanada shell, kind of folding it like a taco. And it'll kind of fold over like that, and when all the ingredients are in, so we're gonna imagine here that I just put all that stuff in, it's gonna fold over like that, and you're gonna press down along the edges. Sometimes you might need a slight bit of water on your fingertips to just really get the seal good. And then after that, you're gonna take a fork and you're going to crimp the edges like this, all the way around the empanada, just for the seal to make sure it holds all the ingredients within. So once it's done, it'll look kind of something like that around the edges, has the crimping. And then you're gonna repeat that on the other side, because if you don't, the stuff will fall out in the pan while you're cooking, and then you just ruin an empanada. So after that, we are going to place the empanadas back into the pan, and we're going to start frying them. So you're gonna fry the empanada until it is a light brown shade, a golden brown shade more. And then when that side is all done, you're gonna flip the empanada and let that side get to that also. So then when it's finally done cooking, you're gonna take the empanada, and what I always think you should always do with making them is use a paper towel to dab off all of the grease, so then it's not super greasy and right away is super edible. Now that you finally cooked the empanadas and they're ready for dishing, we can serve the empanadas to our friends and family. When it comes to personalizing empanadas, seasoning is definitely the way to go. There's a plethora of ways in which you can season your empanadas. While the meat on the inside is already seasoned, for our example, many go out of their way to use a different seasoning on the outside. So for me personally, I use a slight bit of Goya on the shell when it is frying. It just adds that little bit of flavor that I think is really nice. And another way to personalize your empanadas is by using sauces. So one type of sauce that I love to use is mayo ketchup or mayo chup. And now you can see it a lot more in stores, but usually it was a very traditional kind of sauce that went along with a lot of things in Latin America. And then another type of sauce that I like to use is it's like a cilantro lime type of sauce, and it just adds that little bit of flavor. Personally, it's not my favorite, but I know a lot of people who love that kind of tangier taste with it. So the wonderful thing about all these different possible sauces and seasonings is that you're definitely able to experiment with a multitude of different flavors. And finding a specific sauce type is what makes making empanadas so creatively fulfilling. And now that you have a main course selected, you can start combining it with so many other options for side dishes. So using some examples and information from Rene Grosskreutz with Cooking Shoe, suggested on May 24th, 2022, that items such as guacamole, Mexican sweet potato salad, or refried beans will blend perfectly with the empanadas. My preference, however, is the classic white rice and black beans, and I think this combination goes perfectly with everything, especially empanadas. To sum things up, you have learned the incredibly interesting and unique history of the empanadas. You've been taught how to prepare the ingredients, cook the empanadas, and finally how to serve them to you and your family in the most delicious ways possible. You will no longer be faced with the challenge of having barely any time to prepare dinner. Instead, you'll have this incredibly tasty meal that takes barely any time. Envision yourself on a long day after work or school, worn out and starving. However, this time you have the most delectable meal ready to prepare and serve in a matter of moments. You'll be able to satisfy everyone's hunger needs and leave them wanting more. All right, and then here is everybody in the audience. There. All right, there we go.